Welcome to Build Your Wealth Muscle, a podcast dedicated to helping fitness entrepreneurs build wealth by saving taxes and growing their money. Each episode will break down different strategies in the areas of business, tax, and retirement planning specifically for your coaching business. Disclaimer, the topics covered in this podcast are for educational purposes only. This is not advice for your specific situation. Please consult a qualified financial or tax professional before making any changes to your financial or tax situation. Now here's your host, certified financial planner and tax advisor, Pat Darby. On this episode 113, we will learn all about 1099s. We're going to go into what are 1099s, why you need to use them and send them, and next year, how can you avoid them completely? So as always, if this episode helped you or brings you value, please do us a favor and share with a friend. Thank you and enjoy the show. Welcome back to Build Your Wealth Muscle. If this is your first time listening, we have two basic show formats. The majority of the shows are solo, where you have me going pretty deep into a specific topic related to tax, finance, cash flow planning. And then there's others that will bring on a guest and they'll be an outside expert, and it could be legal, finance, mortgages, sales, marketing. And when I say finance, different areas of finance than what we do here. But today it's going to be another timely episode because I'm recording this in mid-January. The next deadline that business owners need to concern themselves with are 1099. And so most people know what a 1099 is or heard the term before, because if you've ever done some sort of side gig, you've probably received a 1099 from someone, which is the most common thing other than a W-2. So what is a 1099? So again, if you've received it from somebody else, it's essentially a receipt from that business owner for paying you. So it's called a 1099 NEC. And so what it basically is the ability for the business owner to write off your expense. So if you forget to do this, it's like telling the IRS you have no receipt for a contractor that did work for you. Maybe they built you a website, maybe they are your podcast editor, whatever it is. If you don't have a 1099 to give them, then you are not able to, under audit, write that off. It would be disallowed. So essentially when you send out the 1099, it goes to two places. One copy goes to the business, the contractor that you hired, and the other goes to the IRS. So that's why when we're talking about reporting your income and things like that as a business owner, the IRS knows what you've made because the person you worked for is under an obligation to let them know. Otherwise, their own, selfishly, they could lose the expense deduction. So there's also steep penalties for missing this. So pay them on time. I'm not going to go into all the different penalties, but just pay these on time. They're due on January 31st of each year. As I'm recording this, we're in 2026, but these filing deadlines are for tax year 2025. As I'm recording this, January 31st is a weekend. So this year it's actually February 2nd, because like everything, tax filing, tax payments, if the day of the week, usually the 15th in a lot of instances, if it falls on a weekend or a federal holiday, it's the next calendar business day. So typically it's January 31st. So just keep that idea in your head. That's when you have to send it to the IRS. And for this, there are no extensions. Okay. So now let's talk about who does not need a 1099 before we get into who does need one. If it's a personal expense, you don't have to worry about it there. So you might have put something into your business, maybe $1,000 for, I don't know, maybe it was a personal vacation or pet care. Who knows? It was a personal expense in the business. There's no 1099 requirement there. If you paid your vendor less than $600, 1099 requirement. The next one, this is the big one. If they are incorporated, so all the C Corps, all the S Corps, which obviously most major companies, like the Fortune 500s. So if you're paying your Verizon bill for the business or insurance, things like that, all these really big companies, doesn't matter how you pay them, they're incorporated, they're C corporations most likely. You don't have a 1099 requirement. You also don't owe one for S corporations. Even if you're an LLC that's taxed as an S corp, you don't need to send that person a 1099. Also, like that, just wanted to have some examples here. a lot of your software vendors, things like that. So there's a lot of your vendors that you're not going to owe because a lot of the big software companies are C corporations. Now there is notable exception here. And I don't know why this is, but law firms, it doesn't matter what entity they are. You owe them a 1099. So if the law firm that you did work with is an S corporation or a C corporation, it doesn't matter. You still have to send a 1099. So now that you know the companies, let's get into the second component of this is like, think how to say it articulately. It's the way you pay, which is the second qualifier. Oh, let me take a step back a second. You don't owe a 1099 to an overseas contractor either. I'll circle back to what you do need to do for them, but you don't have to worry about that at the moment. How do you reduce the 1099s that you have to pay? So now we know who you don't need to send one to. So again, non-incorporated. The second component of whether you owe a 1099 is how you pay that person. So let's say you're paying a vendor who is a regular LLC. If you pay them via cash, check, Zelle, ACH, anything that's just basically a cash transaction, you owe a 1099. So ways to avoid that are to use a credit card, a debit card, PayPal Business, Venmo Business. Again, a lot of times on the personal side, check with these companies because it also changes sometimes. But if you use the personal version, a lot of times you're not paying a transaction cost, so it's free. People tend to lean towards. But a lot of times inside of that transaction fee, they are doing a 1099 requirement for you. It's called the 1099K, like kangaroo. They're doing the reporting for you. So there's still technically a 1099 requirement, but it's not your requirement as the business owner. So again, the ones that are going to trigger it, it's not just who the vendor is, but how you paid them. So in that example from above, if you paid a law firm with a debit card or credit card, even though they're a company that's owed a 1099, you don't owe them the 1099. The credit card or the debit card or PayPal, they're going to send the 1099K on your behalf. So your filing requirement is nothing as a business owner. So again, just to quickly recap, you have to figure out who are the vendors that would need a 1099. And then the second component is, how did you pay those vendors? And that's going to eliminate a bunch more, because if all the vendors that you paid over $600 to, then if you used a credit card on every single one of them, then in that hypothetical example, you don't owe any 1099s. Some of the other things like that are nice, like Fiverr, Upwork, they're going to do the 1099 similar, like you're paying fees there. Typically the fee is where you can kind of get notified that you're probably going to have a 1099 sent for you, a 1099K, if you're incurring some sort of processing fee. All right. So just as a quick aside, similar to what I was just saying before, if you have an international contractor, you don't need to send a 1099 to them, but you do need to essentially have a receipt on file. So that's what I'm going to get into in a minute. So let's say you have determined there's 5 vendors that you're working with in your company, and you pay them through Zelle or ACH, and they are not incorporated. Or let's take another example. You may not know, but all you do know is that these 5 vendors, I ACH them. So I might have a requirement. The way you find out is you send them a W-9. And you've all filled out a W-9 before if you've ever been a 1099 contractor, because it tells them how you are set up. So you're going to send that to them. They're going to give you, when they fill it out, their legal name, their business name, the type of entity that they are. So they'll check off if they're an LLC taxed as an S Corp, or if they're a C corporation, a multi-member LLC. They're going to tell you. And then they're going to give you their tax ID number and their physical address. And so then you use that information to determine, okay, they checked off that they're an S corporation or an LLC taxed as an S corporation. I paid them $2,000, but I have no filing requirement. But that W-9 is essentially your internal receipt that if something ever happened and you had to prove why you didn't send them a 1099, you can show them the W-9 showing I don't have a filing. There's a similar filing requirement, for lack of a better term, for international contractors. It's called the W, and it works the same way. It's basically you send it to the international contractor, they fill it out for you, and now that's your internal record saying this is a contractor. Even if you paid them through ACH, you don't owe them anything. because you have the W-8 on file proving that they're an international contractor. All right, so now you've whittled it all down. So again, you've taken all your vendors and you've said, okay, how did I pay them? Or did I pay them more than $600? Yes. Did I pay them for a debit card, credit card? And you're seeing like, okay, these are all the vendors that I paid cash, ACH, Zelle, or whatever it is. Now you're going to get all the W-9s back from them to figure out now what. And then maybe in that scenario, you have 4 people come back that you still need to send them a 1099. You're going to prepare those 1099s. There's a lot of softwares that I'm a big fan of doing it for like QuickBooks. If you're using like Gusto Payroll, that's one thing that's really nice about them is your contractor can't even get paid until they filled out the W-9 for you. And the sooner you request that, the better. Then you're going to send out the 1099s. Most of the time, I would recommend using a software like a QuickBooks or one of those that's going to e-file it for you because they're taking care of the heavy lifting. They're going to charge you $5 or $6 per return, but makes the process pretty simple. And then just the 2 common mistakes that you should be aware of. One, if you don't necessarily have a bookkeeping system in place, be careful not to forget vendors that you might have paid in the beginning of the year, because as I'm recording this January 2026, if you're a business owner that's doing a lot of stuff on Excel, you may not remember someone you paid $1,000 to the first week of February of 2025. The second component is be crystal clear whether or not your bookkeeper and your accounting team takes care of this for you. Like this is one of the times of year where it's, for lack of a better term, nice the way we operate our business, because we're not the cheapest accounting firm in terms of what we charge for bookkeeping and things like that. We try to have a lot of hands on the process, even though there's some automations behind the scenes. There's still a lot of human beings checking on things. But be careful if you're out there using some really low cost bookkeeping software or very low cost bookkeepers. They may not be including this service for you. So you need to be sure, like all our clients, that we're taking care of this for them. So this was a short episode. Hopefully it's helpful and timely, but just make sure you're out there getting those W-9s back so that you have 1099s that you can get out to your vendors. And as always, hopefully this brought you value, and have a great day. Thank you for joining us this week on Build Your Wealth Muscle. The links mentioned in this episode are available in the show notes. For video clips and more information on tax and retirement strategies for fitness entrepreneurs, please follow my Instagram @thePatDarby. If you found value in this episode, please do us a favor and share with a friend. If you tag me, that'd be appreciated also. Lastly, for help implementing any of the topics discussed, please book a call. The link is also in the show notes. Thank you again for listening, and have a great day.